Hello, Taylor Elwood here, and welcome to Sovereign Submission. Today, I thought that I would approach the topic of how to recognize if you are submissive. And I think this is a really important topic, especially for men, because a lot of times what we have is we have this very prevalent theme that men are supposed to lead, that men are supposed to be in charge, that men are supposed to be dominant. This is something that I see shared a lot in the men's workspace. And I think that, it's coming from a place of trying to help men understand like what does it mean to be a man. But the thing that I found is that this doesn't universally apply to men, just like it doesn't universally apply to women that women are submissive. Like when we try to box people into a particular dynamic or a polarity, what we're really doing is we're taking a risk at narrowly defining who and what they are. And the reality is that when we talk about this concept of submissive, or we talk about the concept of dominance, we talk about anything along those lines, what we're really talking about is the preferred dynamic that we have in relationship. One of the things that I find fascinating when it comes to men is that a man might say, okay, if I'm submissive, does that mean I'm submissive in my life? Does that mean that I'm going to be walked all over in my life if I admit that I'm a submissive man? Far from it. I'm a submissive man. And yet, as you can clearly see here, I am confident, I am focused, I have clarity around the way that I present myself. I'm not acting like I'm not fully in presence with myself. I know what I want. It's just that I happen to know that I want submission. Welcome, Goddess Anitol Becky and Sheena. Glad to have you here. If you have questions as we explore this topic, or comments, feel free to drop those below and I will definitely respond to them. So for men, I think it's really important that they acknowledge that the desire to be submissive is not something that like speaks to how they show up as men overall. It speaks to what they want in relationship. Submission is a conscious choice. And there's a very real difference between submission and codependent nice guy behavior, which a lot of men demonstrate these days. So what's the difference? Codependent nice guy behavior is often unconscious behavior. It's behavior where the person may not even fully acknowledge or recognize that they're codependent, and they may not realize like what is at the root of their codependence. And an important thing to note is that with a person who is codependent, they are often not operating from a place of genuine submission. They're operating from a place of trying to control. In a very real sense, what they're doing is they're trying to operate from a place of topping from the bottom. If we use DS terms, the difference being that really they don't even know that they're necessarily doing that. So, as someone who used to be a nice guy myself, I can give you some examples here. A nice guy is somebody who will put his needs on hold. He will not acknowledge fully what it is that he actually wants. He won't speak up for it. He won't advocate it. And he'll have this unconscious bias toward the way that he shows up in relationship where he'll be like, if I clean the dishes, if I take out the trash, if I mow the lawn, if I do all these other things, then this other person is going to have sex with me. It's a very transactional approach to relationship, and it's a very transactional approach to sex. It's not genuine submission at all. So it's important to recognize that when we see this kind of interaction occurring, but that doesn't mean that somebody's being submissive. It means that they're trying to control a relationship from a codependent place. They have covert contracts in place. They are operating from a place where they're not voicing what their genuine needs or wants are. And folks, I'm having an interesting thing here. I don't know. I saw that someone else joined me, but I'm not able to see your names at the bottom now. This is kind of one of the fascinating things with Substack sometimes. It ends up being a little wonky. So if you do end up leaving messages or something along those lines, I may not see them, and I apologize for that because it's not my intent to have you miss or miss out on your comments. I'm going to continue going forward, and we'll continue broadcasting here regardless. Sheena, if you could actually write a test message for me real quick, just write test or something like that, just so I can see if it shows up, I'd appreciate it. For those of you who are watching this video, Sheena is my beloved mistress, and so I'm in this case asking her to let me know. Okay, I did see that. Thank you, Sheena. Appreciate it. So, people, if you do end up leaving comments, I will see them still. I'll still be able to answer questions. There we go. So, what does it really mean then to consciously choose submission? Well, here's the truth that I found around submission. Being a submissive man calls on me to actually vocalize what I want and need more clearly than I ever have before in my life. If I want to be in a relationship with a dynamic where I am submissive, I actually have to speak up for what I want and need. It means that I have to pull back I have to open the door into my soul, into who I am and who I really want, and share that with my mistress. If I don't share it with her, she's not going to know. Or she might sense something, but she's not going to fully know how to relate or connect to that. And so one of the challenges I think that a lot of submissive inclined men have, where they haven't necessarily acknowledged it fully because they're not maybe fully present with it, is that they aren't speaking up for their desires and their wants. A submissive man is going to have a very clear understanding of what he wants, what he desires, and he's going to be able to advocate for it in a clear way. And she's going to know that he's advocating it for her in a clear way. She's going to feel safe as a result. Here's one of the essential truths about relationship dynamics that I don't see put out there, but I think it's true. If you want to create a sense of like the juicy erotic, what you really need to do is be honest about what you truly want. Performative leadership, like a man trying to be a performative dom, for example, doesn't work. A woman knows when a man is trying to do something along those lines, when he's trying to quote unquote take control of the relationship. And what does she do? She pushes back against it. She's not able to lean into that and feel safe with him. And it may not be something that she really wants anyway. But if he were to actually take a good hard look at the relationship dynamic, what he would actually see is that what's happening is that he's trying to lean into a prescriptive idea as to what masculinity is instead of actually being in touch with the genuine expression of masculinity within himself. As a submissive man, one of the challenges that I fully recognize and acknowledge for myself, and I think any man, whether you're dominant, submissive, or somewhere in between, is the challenge of presence. Because what women really want is presence. And ideally, and here's the truth, men want presence too. I don't know a man alive who doesn't want the experience of presence. At the end of the day, we all want to be seen, heard, and understood. Right down to the earbud falling out of my ear. Still getting used to these. But we all want to be seen, heard, and understood. And if we're not seen and heard and understood, we don't have presence. Think back for a moment to a recent interaction you had with your partner, with your wife, your husband, or what have you. Think back to how present that person was. Did you feel like the person was fully there with you? How did it make you feel if they weren't there? Did you feel like you could trust them? Genuine submission, genuine dominance, whatever else you want to call it, on either end, is really about presence. When I am present with you, you know it. And if I don't feel present with you, you're also going to know that. It's really hard to trust someone and feel safe with them when someone isn't present with you. And this is why when it comes to communication, it's so essential to be clear about like what you really want. If I tell you, for example, that I really want to kneel to you, or that I want you to sit on my face or something like that, but there's some part of you that doesn't feel like I'm fully present, are you going to want to do that? You're not going to want to do it at all. You're going to know that I'm not genuinely there. So presence is an important component of the relationship dynamic. And it's on both or more people, depending on what your relationship choices are. It's on both or more people to cultivate that presence in every interaction, not just in the bedroom, but in every interaction that you have. For example, Sheena knows when I'm not fully present with her, and she can easily call me in, and I know when she's not fully present with me. And let me be clear, presence can show up in multiple ways. Okay, that one fell out too. Presence can show up in multiple ways. So one of the ways that I see presence show up as an example would be choosing to read to your partner at night. So this is one of the rituals that Shannon and I have. One of us will read to the other. We're in a long distance relationship. So, we're not always in person with each other. But even though we're reading on the phone, like we have the phone on and one of us is reading, the other person can tell if that person isn't if the person who's reading can tell if the other person isn't fully listening or connected or present. That's how powerful presence is. We know when someone isn't present with us. We know when they're checked out. And so how do you know if you're a submissive person? This kind of comes back to where we were before. Well, part of it is look at how you're showing up with presence in your life with yourself. Are you fully present with yourself? Are you present with your desires? Are you present with your needs? Are you expressing them clearly to yourself, let alone anyone else? If you don't know what you want, there's no way that you can really genuinely speak to what you actually desire. And what'll happen is you'll speak to what you think the other person wants. And if you're speaking to what you think the other person wants, there's no way that they can trust that relationship. Genuine submission requires that you understand what you genuinely want. It means knowing yourself. When I know myself, when I know what I want, then I speak up for it and advocate for it. And I'm not afraid to share it. Now, if the other person that I'm involved with isn't interested in that, then that right there is an indicator that instead of trying to fit my life around them, I need to be willing to say, okay, this isn't a good fit. And this is where so many people get stuck in any kind of relationship dynamic. We don't honor our own needs and wants. Instead, we try to fit ourselves around the other person because we're afraid that that person will leave us. What we don't know is that that other person will leave us or we'll leave them because we're not honoring our essential truths. For me to be submissive to someone else means that I honor my essential truth. It means that I'm comfortable with myself and I'm comfortable with the reality that if my values don't align fully with the person that I'm with, that I'm going to actually say that I'm going to say there's a mismatch here. And I haven't always done that. I've been in relationships where I abandoned my sense of values. I didn't even know what my sense of values were. And this is the challenge I see for a lot of men who in general, whether they identify as dominant, submissive, or anything in between, they don't know what their values are. A man who does not know what his values are and can't articulate them clearly is a man who is lost. He has not found himself. He's not grounded himself in a sense of purpose and mission. And there is no woman alive who wants to be with a man who doesn't have a sense of mission and purpose in his life. Because when she knows that if he has a sense of mission and purpose in his life, that he has a clear sense as to what he actually wants. And that also means But if he knows what he wants, he also likely knows who he wants, i.e., her. She can trust that. She can lean into that. And if she's taking on the role of the dominant, she can take it on in a way where she's like, I can comfortably step into this because I know that this man wants to be here. I know this man wants to submit. I know this man wants to kneel or do whatever rituals are chosen. And he's choosing to do it from a place of sovereign awareness of his own values. He's honoring his inner yes, and he's giving that yes to me and honoring me. And for men who are watching this, what I would share with you is that it's really important to get clear on those values. Understand like what you genuinely want in your life. Because if you don't know what you want, it's going to make it harder for you to genuinely show up in relationship with other people. It's going to make it harder for you to be present in the relationship in a way that she's going to trust. And this is a really important component to how you get the relationship that you want. Know your values. Know what you genuinely want. Sheena said, explain the process of calling ourselves and each other in. What does that look like in practice? Great question. So here's what it looks like in practice. I'm gonna actually use an example from last night, Sheena. We have our phone call each night for reading. Sheena wasn't feeling well. She said, I'm not feeling well. I've got some stuff going on, and wished me a good night on a voice note. And my response was, no, we need this ritual. This is important. So I called her and I shared with her. Normally she reads to me, but I shared with her. I said, I'd be happy to read to you tonight. Would you be open to that? I called her in. And I didn't call her in with the intent to try and fix anything or solve anything. Okay. That's an important component to all this. Neither partner should ever try to call the other in with an attempt to fix or solve. Because when we try to fix or solve, we're trying to control. This goes back to codependent behavior. What I did is I simply showed up and I said, hey, I'm here. And if you want, I'd be happy to read to you. I have a book selected. And that was something that Sheena could do. And so we chose that. And so I read to her. And that was an act on my part of calling her in, but it was also calling me in because I could have easily checked out. I could have been like, okay, well, she's not feeling well. I'll just go ahead and keep editing the book that I'm working on or working on some project, or I'll go read a book or play a game or go for a walk or do any of the other things that I could have done. I could have done that last night. I mean, she wouldn't have said anything necessarily, but I knew for myself that I needed that contact. So I was calling myself into the connection as well. And so what I did is I just said to myself, I'm going to call her. The worst that could have happened is that she would have said, like, look, I really am just not in the mood to talk tonight. I really need my space. Okay, fair enough. But I wanted to have that live interaction. I didn't want it to just be a voice note. I wanted us to actually connect and to have that opportunity. And that was a really important component of this. So when we connect with each other, we are connecting with conscious choice. I made the conscious choice to call her. I called myself in when I made that choice. And I called her in. This is an important component of relationships that we really need to understand, that regardless of what your relationship dynamic is, that you are able to call in yourself and you're able to call in the person that you're with or people that you're with. When we don't call ourselves in, we don't call the other people in, we are actually taking the relationship for granted. And that's not what we want to be doing. The choice in my case of being a submissive man is that I am choosing that submission every moment of the day. It's not just choosing it in the morning when I kneel and I record a voice note, or if I'm there in person, I kneel and I say, I say my thing. I mean, that's a conscious choice right then. But every moment after and before is also just as important as that moment of kneeling. It shows up. Another example I'll share in terms of calling in was that I was visiting Sheena recently. We were playing games, her, me, and her other partner, and we were playing, really our partner, because he's also, but I'm not. Yeah, I'm just gonna leave it at that. We were all playing games together, but I had my phone nearby and I was checking it, and Sheena came over and she's like, "I think I'm gonna take your phone away from you." I was like, "No," and I kind of got defensive about the whole thing. And she walked away, left it at that, but I could tell she was upset. I thought about it for a moment and I'm like, why am I holding on to this phone so much? Kinda similar to the earbuds. I gotta get this fixed. I'll find it later. But it was a moment where I had to acknowledge something important. Submitting to her, but also that I was making something more important than our relationship at that point in time. So what I ended up doing, I took the phone downstairs. I put it face down on the dresser and I walked back up, apologized to Sheena, acknowledged what had happened. We talked about it for a few moments. And it wasn't a case where she even felt the need to quote unquote punish me or anything like that. It was just more a matter of us calling each other in, recognizing what was going on. And we spent the rest of the day, we had a wonderful rest of the day together, all three of us. But part of it meant that I had to receive what she said, and receive her input as data. And I had to receive it and acknowledge it and allow it to penetrate me. This is the challenge that so many men have, is they struggle with being penetrated by women. And it may sound odd, like you might say, well, men normally don't. Men are normally the ones who penetrate. Well, that's not entirely true. Yes, men do penetrate if we look at penis and vagina sex, um, but one, there's many multiple forms of sex. But secondly, and just as importantly, the act of penetration goes both ways. A woman penetrates a man emotionally. A woman penetrates a man emotionally. She penetrates him with her presence, even as he penetrates her with his presence. Genuine penetration is this connection that occurs. And the act of submission for a man is the receiving of that penetration instead of fighting it. The man receives it. Now, you might ask, does a dominant man ever get penetrated by a woman? And I would argue that he does. A dominant man also gets penetrated. If he is with a submissive woman, he still gets penetrated by her. How could he possibly dominate her if he isn't penetrated by her? And we may again ask the question, does a dominant woman get penetrated by a submissive man? And the answer is yes. Because her ability to receive that man, to see him as he is, and to be able to give him the direction that he may need, the direction that he's asking for, to help him get out of his head and back into his body, still requires an ability to be penetrated by him, to fully receive him. And this is why when we look at relationships dynamics, it's important to not pigeonhole or categorize in one way or another. Instead, what we need to really do is just be fully present with what we want and desire. When we can do that, that's when we can fully welcome in the kind of relationship that we want. Welcome, Ray. Glad to have you here. If you have any comments or questions, feel free to drop them in. So to wrap this video up, what I would share with you is, how do you know if you're submissive? Ask yourself what you really want. Don't ask it from a place of, how do I measure up against other men in my life? Or how do I present myself out there to the world? What is it that you want for yourself at the core of your being? That's the question you want to ask yourself. When you know what you want, that will show up fully and presently in your relationship. You have to know it from a place of recognizing what your values are. You're not trying to measure up to how society tells you men should be. You're acknowledging what you really genuinely want for yourself as a man. That's what gives you permission, permission to submit. I have in my wallet a slip of paper. Show it to you here. Pull it out. Here it is. On it, I say, I give myself permission. This is something I look at every day. Why do I have it in there? Because I think it's important to give myself permission to truly honor and acknowledge what I want. I give myself permission to submit. I give myself permission to be a man on my terms, not someone else's terms. I give myself permission to fully own and explore what my desires are without anyone telling me what that makes me as a person or a man. And I would invite you to do the same. If you're a woman who's turned on by the idea of a man who would submit to her, ask yourself to explore that. Like, what does that look like? What does it look like for the feminine to be in that kind of power dynamic? And one thing I'll caution you, all of you, on, don't lean into the notion that if you're like if you want to be dominant, that means you're leaning into your inner masculine, and that if you want to be submissive, you're leaning into your inner feminine. I would argue that the expression of dominance may take different forms, in terms of how you identify, and the expression of submission may. But to categorize them in a gendered way is actually to take away from the fullness of that experience. The desire to be dominant or submissive isn't pigeonholed to one gender or another. It's an expression of being and presence, and it's going to be unique to you. My experience of submission is not going to be the same as another man's experience of submission, and that's perfectly okay. We don't need to pigeonhole ourselves into broad strokes as to what this looks like. What we really need to do is be honest with ourselves about what we want, and then share that with the people that we choose to be in relationship with. And also recognize that we are giving that as a gift to those people, even as those people are giving to us as a gift their desires and their truths. That is one of the most important and responsible things that we can do in order to cultivate healthy relationships. So I want to thank you all for watching. I recognize that a couple times the earbuds fell, a couple other things. I am still figuring some of this stuff out, but I wanted to thank all of you for being here. And if you end up having any comments or questions after the fact, feel free to leave them in the post. Thank you all and take care.